Like to call this meeting to order. Today is Tuesday, August 10th. This is a City Council study session. Let's please call roll.
Mayor Mingarelli.
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Scholl.
Here.
Councilman Blair.
Yes.
Councilman Good.
Here.
Councilmember Rusing.
Here.
Councilman Sischka.
Here.
Councilman Tenney.
Here.
All are present.
And did you ask for Councilmember Rusing?
I did.
Okay. I didn't hear her.
Oh, yeah, she's here.
She's here. Okay. Very good. Thank you. All right. Welcome, everyone. Thanks for being here today. We have two items on our agenda. So let's start with item 3A, please.
City facility naming policy guidelines.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. Tyler Goodman from the City Manager's Office. Luckily, this is not a legislative update. Here for something different this time. Several months ago, the Council asked staff to go and research and look at what other cities and towns were doing with policies regarding naming of city facilities. So with the help of our clerk, we reached out to Arizona cities and towns, received a handful of feedback from cities and towns in Arizona, and also found some different resources from across the country. Try to pare them down into just a few bullet points so we could make this manageable. Of course, we are looking for your guidance so that we can craft a policy and bring it back to you. But basically what we found, I'll go through these. Some common elements among all the policies were they were after a person whose contribution was significant or extraordinary in nature. The name engenders a strong positive image that's not controversial in the community. The naming was not associated with religious organizations, political candidates, or partisan organizations. The person must have been deceased for a certain period of time. That ranged anywhere I found from 1 to 5 years. There were differing procedure elements based on what type it was, a library, a city hall, park, already said library, streets, other types of facilities. And the application process was either reviewed by a staff member. Sometimes it was just the city manager. Sometimes it was a committee before going to the city council. So more specifically, the three results we heard back from in Arizona, Carefree, they said, well, we actually don't have a policy, but we recently had a naming that was done by resolution. So they simply, it came to council. It was a very prominent member who had passed away of the community, who made a lot of contributions. So they decided to name a facility after that person, done simply by resolution. Bullhead City, they actually have a decent policy. It's a few pages long and it's more detailed. So they have a set of criteria. An applicant submits a written request. They have to detail the reasons why they want that facility named after a certain person. And of course, it has to follow all the guidance of the policy. It goes to the council, and they also seek evidence of community support. And that came in the form of petitions. And they had rules regarding the petitions. It needed to have name, address, that type of information to verify it was residents of that city. And then finally, Winslow, their policy focused both on streets and facilities, some different elements for both. But if we're focused on facilities, the policy said, basically, we don't want to do this just on a whim. We have to be very thoughtful and very careful as we do this. Only the mayor or a set of council members. So with our rules here in Prescott, that would be 2 council members or the mayor or the city manager could request the naming of a facility. And it followed many of those bullet points that I listed above. So a lot of them came down to just those items. What we're seeking is, do you want to just focus on facilities? Do you want the policy to talk about streets as well, or parks and those types of things? And kind of your general guidance, direction on where should we go with this so we can craft something for you.
Well, Mayor, if I can.
Yeah, go ahead.
First thing is I'd like to see a decision made of whether it should be waiting until somebody dies to honor them. Number one. I mean, we did that with Rollie P. Simmons Adult Center. Whether it should or shouldn't have been named after him is up for debate, I'm sure. But to wait until somebody dies to recognize them, I think is kind of ludicrous. I think if they're special in the community, they've done a good job. I can see parks being named. I can see trails. George Sheets, who did a lot for the trail system. We may want to name a trail system after him. I mean, there's a lot of different things we can think about, but I think you need to decide first whether somebody has to die before you recognize them.
Other questions, comments from the council?
Yes, I'd like to break in.
Go ahead.
Sure. I think for me, the goal of this process should be it's the whole community honoring the individual, not just the city council. And I agree with Mr. Blair. I don't think the person necessarily has to be deceased, but maybe just make sure that they're like maybe retired and or over the age of 80, so that you know they're retired. And also we should think about them being the person we're honoring. Should they be a resident of Prescott or the immediate surrounding area? Should they be a local person if we're going to name community property after them?
Okay. Thank you. Anybody else?
Yeah, I have something, Mayor.
Yeah, go ahead.
Tyler, can you scroll up
Yes.
to the top there? It said the person whose contribution was significant or extraordinary. Does that mean significant in that city and extraordinary in that city?
Typically so. In those policies, that's what it implied, yeah.
You know, I keep relating the having to die first before you get something named after you. Kind of like I don't know, I mean, it's kind of like having somebody honored after they die. They don't care. They're gone. And if we really want to make it significant, we shouldn't say they have to be dead first in order for them, them to be honored that way.
Yeah, Mayor. Yeah, I think there's certainly, I'm trying to think of different scenarios and different people that have done extraordinary things, whether it's Charles Lindbergh or someone who just did something so extraordinary during the course of their lifetime that it's clear to the public and the community that that's something that, should be recognized, and probably that community would be connected with that person probably for maybe forever. So necessarily waiting until they pass before that could be honored, I think, is probably an unnecessary restriction. But I think certainly some period of time needs to be passed before some of those recognitional memorials or parks or streets or whatever, to be able to have some time to reflect and make sure that this is something that really is substantial. Usually when there's major issues or a major personality, sometimes making a decision too early can lead to some additional controversy and kind of maybe take the shine off of that person's record or achievements. So I think there probably needs to be some balance between how long and to what extent. If somebody just made a phenomenal, maybe a John Glenn or somebody that, the first Neil Armstrong, first person to walk on the moon. That's the kind of criteria I think that no doubt would be worthy of someone who's still alive and making some contribution to the community at large.
Okay. Mayor Pro Tem?
Thanks, Mayor. I guess my personal preference would be that our policy is that we don't name city facilities after people. I think it can be controversial. People can have their feelings hurt. Someone may like this person, but this person doesn't like that person. I think there are other more meaningful ways that we could recognize influential leaders in our community, whether that's a wall of fame or some sort of other memorial project, because I don't hear people calling Granite Creek Park the A.C. Williams Granite Creek Park, or the Grace Sparks Activity Center, or the Rollie P. Simmons Adult Center. I don't hear people referring it to that by that name. And so I think that kind of loses the meaning of it when we could potentially recognize these leaders and these people in ways that are more meaningful to the work that they did, and may encourage people to learn about them instead of just seeing their name on a building, but not knowing what that person did.
Typically, roads have been named after leaders in the community, whether it's Larry Caldwell, a past mayor, or whether it be Gale Gardner Way, after Gale Gardner and his contributions. It just, the Sam Steiger crosswalk, whether you like it or not, that's there.
Yeah.
And it has a significant meaning to a lot of people that live in the community. So I guess it could be anything, just as long as it's vetted through the council and approved. And I would agree with Alexa. I think, when you start stepping out and naming buildings after someone, certainly you're going to have some controversy saying, well, I don't like that guy. Why did they name him after him? Mm-hmm. So, again, going back to naming a trail after George Sheets would be fitting because of his 20-plus years of building trails in the community.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, that makes sense. Tyler, did you find anything like some sort of wall or area in a city hall or anything where they, recognize with a plaque or something instead of naming?
I did not. I'm sure I could, specifically looking for that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mayor, I hate to interrupt, but I've actually seen that and done that, like a Hall of Fame type concept where you have a plaque that goes to the accomplishments of the individual and you hang it and you induct people as if it was a sports Hall of Fame type thing. So
Right.
that's out there too, is it not?
Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it could be an alternative. I was at the Salinas Rodeo and they have a wall of fame with J.C. Trujillo there with a plaque. And then it has a nice tribute, kind of gives you some background about JC and what he had accomplished or won over the years. And, it was kind of cool to see that. And there were probably 30 or 40 people at least named on this wall of fame. And so that could be something else for us to think about that could accomplish the same kind of goal without necessarily naming a facility after someone.
And the hospital has that when you walk through the front door for givers and gifters. And then they have all the past directors and all the past doctors lining the hallways. So, there's a lot of ways to do stuff.
And Councilman Blair, you may have more opportunity, maybe fairly limited if you're looking at facilities and streets and all that. Mm. But if you have this wall, you may have the opportunity to recognize more people.
That's true.
That way. Anything else from the council?
I'd like to make a few comments.
Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you. Well, I'd like to see the word facility expanded to all city property so that it would include trails, open space, parks, streets, and then certain rooms in buildings too, like our library and the adult center are named after different people. And also I'd like to see, before the application goes to the council for a vote, that we have a study session and a public comment period. And I just would like to see members of the public submitting the nomination application. And, of course, the family, get the family's blessing. But I think that we definitely need a policy for naming city property instead of a resolution.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else from the council have any thoughts? Do we have public comment?
We do, Mayor. Jerry Smith-Fernara.
Jerry Smith-Fernara, 405 Park Avenue, and I, as September 7th, I will have lived here 80 years. So I was here before a lot of you, and I remember when you were born.
Great day, wasn't it?
I do remember when you were born. I remember when your mother was single and would come up on the Greyhound bus.
Yeah.
Anyway, I just want to say that those of you that haven't lived here a long time, we've made some real mistakes on naming things. And Alexa, you're right about a lot of this. First of all, if you name anything, it should go to the city, the voters in the city, and not a group. One of the biggest disgraces was the Willie Simmons naming when it was done over at the Jersey Lily one evening. People all over this town were very upset because that a lot of people had worked for that senior center, and all at once it turned out that it was passed. I really think that, and if there is anybody, I mean, Charlotte Hall, it was named Charlotte Hall because she moved in there in 1938. But Grace Sparks, of all people, is a person that more things could have been named after because she literally brought this town through 40 years of the most unbelievable bad times and made everything happen, from the rodeo and all the Conservation Corps buildings and everything else. So I would like to see everything go, and I don't care whether a person's dead or alive, really, if you're going to honor them. But I don't think it's up to 7 or 8 people on a city council to name this. I think it should be going to the people, because the biggest mess we had was when the Jersey Lily people, some of the council people, went up there, had a few drinks, and named the Willie Simmons. And then you finally had the widow of the man it was supposed to be named for honored a year ago with a plaque down here. Those kind of things are not forgotten by people in this city. And in fact, the 3rd richest man in the United States from Omaha, Nebraska, with everything he's done and everything he's done all over the world, but especially in the United States, has never had one thing named after him in Omaha or in his state. And anytime it comes up, he stops it. So I think this is just utterly wrong to let 7 or 8 people make a decision.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jerry.
Other public comment?
I don't have anything else, Mayor.
Betty?
I'm Elizabeth Boogalton. I live at 179 Juniper Ridge Drive. I sent a packet out to all of the members of the council. How do we remember somebody? How do we know somebody if they've never been remembered? And I have been working 3 years to bring attention to the city about Major Frank Shield Jr. He came here when he was 3 years old in a writing that his sister put in the paper in 1985 asking us why we never remember him. She told us that when he was 7 years old, he knew he wanted to be a pilot. His room had posters of Lindbergh and everybody else up. He goes to our school system. In junior high school, he formed the first aeronautical program in junior high. In high school, he was known as the Flying Cowboy. So when I was doing all this research for the monument, I couldn't help but keep going back and researching Frank Shield. Frank Shield then declined an appointment to West Point because he wanted to be a pilot. So he went to the University of Arizona for 2 years so he could qualify for flight school. And he immediately went there and joined the Army Air Corps. And he was sent off to Texas for basic training and intensive training at Kelly Field. And he was out in Montgomery, Alabama, teaching other people how to fly and become pilots, when President Franklin Delano Roosevelt decided that he would help China fight against Japan because Japan had taken all the port cities away and they only had the Burma Road. So Frank Shield was chosen first by one of the famous pilots, Skipper, and he went off to China. He became a combat pilot. They were under the American Volunteer Group, and they were only supposed to be there for about a year, and they were ended after 7. They actually established the best fighting things in the history of aviation. Frank Shield destroyed 7 Japanese planes, making him an ace, a Flying Tiger ace. From there, he became Chenault's reconnaissance pilot, because all the other pilots started to go up and come back and tell Chenault they didn't want to be one because they didn't like getting so close to the Japanese bases. Well, not Frank Shield. Frank Shield used to go right down in and get the photos, and it made, then they could bomb all of these places that helped destroy and save the Burma Road. Frank Shield earned a Silver Star for one of the reconnaissance missions, 2 American Distinguished Flying Crosses, the British Distinguished Flying Cross. And then, to come to find out, the Army built a camp in China called Camp Shield after the boy here that never gets his name mentioned. And it was for all the soldiers, so they could have 8 to 10 days of rest, being either British, Chinese, American, whatever. And he comes home, and he gets killed. He crashed when he was 25 years old and killed. And they said he had one of the biggest military funerals here. But what happened after that? Because World War I came before World War II, we only honor a local hero. Frank Shield is known worldwide. I must have 15 books written about him. And we do nothing here in the city of Prescott. And Mr. Shiska, you mentioned who cares if the person has died. Well, his great-nephew comes to my house all the time. And I've worked very hard. I put a 28-foot brewery up in the library. The mayor came, Councilman Phil Good came. I invited all of you to come to my home when I had to do it for the Western History Center. Who showed up? Brandon Montoya. And nobody here. I left messages on all your phones. We need to bring this man to the attention of Prescott. And just because he died, he was killed on the very first anniversary of Pearl Harbor. And he's local. So I hope I've made an impression. I've certainly worked hard trying to get him recognized, as everybody knows, the mayor knows, and Phil Good. And I wish you all, I had the book that everybody signed and left comments, and you should have seen how many older pilots from here put in comments about Frank Shield. Thanks for bringing him to our attention, and so forth and so forth. So here I am delivering my same message over again.
Thank you, Betty.
Thank you.
Ma'am, can you please complete one of the public comment cards?
There's some
there
forms back there, Betty, on the table. Any other public
That's all I
comment?
have, Mayor.
Anything on Zoom?
No.
Anything else, Tyler?
No, not for me. I think that's good direction.
All right. Michael?
Mayor, Tyler, do you have a good idea where we're going from here?
I do.
Okay. I just want to make sure, because I wasn't quite sure.
I'm not. Maybe you can kind of summarize for us where you think we're going from here.
Well, from what I've written down, from the comments I've heard from council, should be from the Prescott city of Prescott or the area, local area. It should be regarding all city property. That leaves pretty much everything on the table for naming. It doesn't have to be a person who's deceased. It could be a living person. There should be an application process. It should come to council for final review. There could possibly be a public comment period, and also looking at the alternative of a wall of fame concept. But I'm happy to add anything to that or take away whatever's relevant to you.
Mayor, I'd like to say one more thing here. I'm sorry that people misinterpreted what I said, because I didn't say that nobody cares about the dead person. What I said is the dead person has his reward, and he probably doesn't care.
Yeah, probably not.
So under the parameters that Tyler just articulated, do you want us to draft some kind of application? Is that the right?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
Bring it back for review and
Yeah.
other comments. Okay.
Yeah, I think the Hall of Fame or the Wall of Fame probably is something that could be included so that some unique performance or achievement can be recognized. But that would, I think, be maybe in addition to some of these more important recognitions. But I think Mrs. Bourgault's comment is quite apt because here's a situation where maybe shortly after or a year after Pearl Harbor and during the fight for World War II, a lot of maybe those achievements kind of got diluted in the fight for the completion of the World War II battles. And because there wasn't recognition, eventually it got lost in history. So I think it's important that at some point those recognitions occur so that they don't get forgotten. And when we have things like the Chamber of Commerce and their little history tour thing, it gives people, not only visitors, but even maybe new residents, an opportunity to say, well, who was J.S. Hacker? Or who was Gail Gardner? And that allows that kind of recognition and memory to be reinforced over time. So I think those comments and putting together, I think, some of the public comments or comment period is valuable. I mean, we've seen this on a national scale where even some people who were recognized now have questionable backgrounds after some reviews. So sometimes that's can be potentially concerning if we recognize someone who hasn't had a significant amount of time since their career has ended or even their life has ended. So I think there's probably some balance here. I think we can probably see what each end of the spectrum is sometimes. I'm reminded of the comments of Thurgood Marshall made on the Supreme Court when they were deliberating what was pornography. He said, I can't define it, but I know it when I see it. So maybe it would be something of a similar nature when it's real clear that someone definitely needs to be recognized, and maybe at the other end of the spectrum, maybe not enough time, or maybe the magnitude of the achievement doesn't really reach the standard of some major recognition.
I have a comment, Mayor. I think this whole process makes me think of being a Truman Scholar and what that means. The Truman Scholarship was developed to be a living legacy to President Truman. And so all Truman Scholars learn about him, his achievements, what he contributed. And I don't know if I would know as much about Truman if I hadn't been part of that process. And so I think part of this process that we're doing here, we should be thinking about what's meaningful, what will really promote the legacy of this person by just slapping their name up on a side of a building or doing this Hall of Fame or something else. I know there's several scholarships in town that are named after the hotshots who have fallen, and they have to emulate the personality traits of those people and their commitment to the community. And so I think we just have to think about the meaningfulness of naming something after someone, and if there are better ways to do that, that would really promote the legacy of that person and what they contributed to our community.
Good. Anything else?
I have a comment.
Yeah, go ahead.
I think the Hall of Fame is a wonderful idea that can be included in this policy. We're going to have a new city hall, and maybe we can design something to honor people in the city hall with plaques and photos.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yep. Thank you. All right. If there's nothing else, thank you, Tyler. Let's move on to item B, please.
Creative concept for the 2021 Economic Development and Business Tourism Marketing and Advertising Campaign.
All right. Good afternoon, Mayor, Council, and Steward Economic Development and Tourism. The item before you today doesn't require any action. It is just a presentation. And as you're aware, the Heart and Soul team has worked really hard the last several months with local stakeholders, staff, discovery groups, and to develop the economic development, business attraction, and business tourism campaign. and the campaign has been chosen and approved. And Heart and Soul team members, Brad and Matt, are here today to present this creative concept to you. Thank you.
Mayor, Council, it's a pleasure to be back. It was a couple months ago when we got approved, and we're grateful for that. And we're excited to share with you some of the road that we've traveled to get to this creative concept. Matt will be presenting the creative. I'm only good at setting up the creative. So, John, let's go ahead and get started. Quick background as a reminder, Heart and Soul, we are a Phoenix-based agency. Although I have had a home up here in Prescott for the last 6.5 years, so I do feel like I'm part of this city, and I do think it helped provide some insights about how this community works. But we didn't take that for granted. We went through the RFP process, and we were very, very proud to emerge with a 1-year contract. Next. Very quickly, as Ann just mentioned, our main focus primarily was to create a unique branded multimedia marketing and advertising campaign to attract businesses and increase economic development in Prescott. And then secondarily, try to use those same assets to leverage tourism and bring in more of the short-term meeting and conferences market. And, you know, we recognize that all of you, as well as several business leaders outside of this council, were kind of our stakeholders. And that's why we made our deep dive into the research so very broad. Next. We did do a bunch of discovery sessions at hotels and one-on-ones, some Zoom calls. Thank you, Phil, for participating in a Zoom call with me several months ago. But basically, we used it, and we came up with over 30 pages of analysis and research. And that we began to synthesize to get at the core idea that Matt will share with you in a moment. Next. Again, we did a lot of qualitatives, and we are grateful for the mayor's time, learning all sorts of different things. But we also talked, importantly, to a lot of the business leaders, many of whom you'll see referenced by Matt, because they made a decision already to come to Prescott, and we really wanted to understand those insights that unlocked the reason for them being here. And I think that's what's created a very unique, one-of-a-kind campaign idea. I won't go through the SWOT, but again, this is available to all of you. I will simply say that there were a tremendous amount of strengths that we wanted to build on. I believe our agency fundamentally believes you drive your strengths, and this city fortunately has so many for us to call out. They include and this was universal among the business leaders. Yeah, they want a great business environment, but they're also looking for an incredible opportunity for a great lifestyle and a balanced lifestyle, not only for themselves and their family, but importantly for their colleagues as well. With that, I believe we make a transition to Matt. Yes, indeed.
All right. Great job, Brad. Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Matt Moore. I'm one of the co-founders and Chief Creative Officer at Heart and Soul Marketing. Our team had a wonderful time working on this project. We brought 4 different territories to different city leaders, and we have chosen one. I'm excited to read that one to you today. The one we have chosen is called Business Unusual. And I'm going to read this one to you in sort of a manifesto. This is similar to what a online video would look like or sound like. Make some tweaks in there. And we are kind of putting storyboards together, final scripts, beginning doing some shooting across the area. But very excited about Discover Business Unusual. Next slide, it will be the manifesto script. So it will sound something like this. This isn't exactly final for video, but something like this. Exhausting commutes, inflated taxes, draining bureaucracy, stunted growth. In the big city, that's just business as usual. But in Prescott, Arizona, you'll notice business is a little unusual. Less red tape, more cut ribbons, fewer hurdles, firmer handshakes, high-tech industries thriving in high-touch culture with a small-town spirit. Up-and-coming entrepreneurs rubbing elbows with locals at historic Western watering holes. The freedom of a mountain lifestyle while staying easily connected to the world at will. People doing what they love in a place they love doing it. Yes, it's a little unusual, but when you move your business to Prescott, you won't regret leaving business as usual behind. Prescott, Arizona, Discover Business Unusual. Really excited about bringing this to life. When we think about a campaign, we want something that is going to get attention. It's going to be thumb stopping or page stopping. And the idea that contrast as we reach out to very specific targeted business leaders, C-suite executive, business owners, entrepreneurs looking to start their business, that line of Discover Business Unusual is that line we're looking for to grab attention. And it really does set up as, why is Prescott a great choice to move, relocate, or start your business here? Prescott is a beautiful town, and we have some wonderful things to show off. And we will focus on things like CP Technologies and Pure Wafer that have this incredible technology visuals that we can show to show that Prescott has something very unusual here that you might just not know of. So let me show you how we'll bring this to life in a couple different ways. One more slide. On the right-hand side, you'll see sort of a ripple effect. We're going to begin, like I said, with the manifesto or online video. We are going to focus on testimonials from certain business leaders in Prescott, and we will expand that, but that sort of dark green circle there is where we'll begin. Then we'll focus on an overhaul of the website, search, LinkedIn. Again, this is not a shotgun blast campaign. This is a very fine, laser-targeted campaign on those C-suite executives or business leaders we want to make sure here our campaign, targeted email as well. Then we expand out with targeted social media and then other PR opportunities and experiences for people to understand why Prescott is a wonderful choice. I'll show you, let's jump to another slide here. I'll show you some of the testimonials that will kind of come to life. The next one talks about Mike McCormick, CEO at CP Technologies. Mike has a phenomenal story that we are going to focus on. Mike will be definitely an influential face and voice in our campaign. These are some of the things he is definitely going to talk about. Of course, we'll get all of these things into a great 60-second soundbite so we don't let people click away. Next one, here's some more answers from Mike about things he's definitely going to focus on. Testimonial number 2 will come from John Haas. Obviously, John has tremendous experience both at Embry-Riddle, but also as part of the Center for the Future here in Prescott. John is definitely a great face and voice for why relocate your business and why Prescott is thriving. And the final one for this first round is Mark Borowitz, CEO at Pure Wafer. Obviously, Mark has main company headquarters in San Jose, but has a great location here in Prescott. These are very impressive people to tell the why Prescott story, and they will absolutely be featured in social media, online through digital video, and on our website as well, which I mentioned is going to have a great overhaul. So you will see over the next few weeks us shooting and recording all these different testimonials and parts of the manifesto video. Then we will, I'm sure, be right back here showing it at some point when it is all complete and ready for review. Or unveiling, Brad, I maybe should say instead.
Either way, that's basically all we had today. We know that time is of the essence for you especially, so we didn't want to tie up too much of your time today, but we are really, really grateful. You were one of our first 3 clients at this agency that started in October of 2020, and we couldn't be more proud to be working with and for you. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, gentlemen. Questions, comments from the council?
We're okay to bring in more people?
Yeah.
I just, thank you. Appreciate it. That revolving doors out there, you know, the more people that come to love our community. As somebody who was born and raised here, I just hope we don't beat the goose over the head with a hammer, you know. And it's nice when they come and leave their money and have great employees and all that stuff, but I always worry about the mass exit of people coming here and then we look like where they left. But thank you for what you do.
Yeah, I think it's great content, and I think those testimonials are very aptly chosen. Great people that have moved their businesses here and are very successful, doing a great job, and it's kind of the direction I think that Prescott wants to go. So thank you. Other comments?
Yeah, thank you, Brad, and thank you, Matt. I really like the business unusual concept because we do have very unusual types of combination of business and environment and lifestyle. Sometimes people who haven't been here before look at the size of the community and probably reach conclusions that don't nearly provide the broader spectrum of what a great community it is to not only visit, but to relocate and expand their businesses. So I really like the concept. Thanks.
Greatly appreciate that. One of the things we came across is just how many hidden gems exist in this community, whether it be Embry-Riddle and people just don't know about it. Last week, Matt and I are over at Yavapai College. Oh my gosh, the things that they've got going on that most people don't know about is just extraordinary. And I have another meeting over there later this afternoon. So again, we don't have to knock down the doors and have everybody from California race in here at one time. This is about managed and smart growth. But I think this community's done a good job, and I think we can continue to do it. And we're going to be very laser focused. Yeah. You're not gonna see lots of big TV ads out there. I promise you. We don't have the money to do it, frankly.
Any other questions, comments from the council?
I just want to thank you for the job that you're doing. It's important that we diversify our economy. Looks like we're heading in the right direction. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Kathy.
Okay, any public comment?
No, Mayor.
All right. Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
Thanks.
Anything else?
I guess when they're leaving, but what's next?
I think the video they put together.
Okay. So that's when they come back, we'll see the final product. Okay.
Well, Mayor, I had a question for him. When they talked about the website, when you guys talked about the website, was that redoing the city website, or was that redoing an economic development website? What's that all about?
Yeah, it's the ED the economic development website, which is PrescottEBiz.com.
Okay.
And it needs an overhaul, and it needs some.
Can you do the city website at the same time?
We really, because of the strategic things that we're trying to do, we want to be able to implement measurements and tracking on there where we can track the campaign and look at these results and make sure that we're doing that in a strategic way. So that's one of the biggest reasons.
Thanks, Annie.
Well, I can just add a little bit. I was one of the proponents of these testimonial type stories because one thing I've realized about business relocates here in Prescott is a ton of this is just word of mouth. And we saw that just the other day. We met with a company that's relocating, and they looked at the San Diego space that CP Tech got out of. And you realize how small it is and how important it is to have these guys and ladies tell the story of why they came here. Because, I speak as an individual. That resonates with me more than a bunch of glossy, pretty pictures. I'm coming to this community because they get it. And it doesn't need to be much more complicated than that.
Okay. Anything else?
Get it.
All right. Thanks, everyone. This meeting is adjourned.